While the South African government says the UK's decision to keep South Africa on the red list of countries is disappointing, currently visitors from South Africa need to stay in a government-appointed hotel where they must quarantine for 10 days at their own cost. While there was speculation that South Africa would be removed from the red list on Friday, this did not materialize. So for more on this now, I'm joined by the UK's Acting High Commissioner to South Africa, Adam Bai. Adam, thank you so much for your time this evening. We've been trying to understand and unpack this decision that took place on Friday. From your end and from what you know, what is the scientific reason for South Africa remaining on the UK's red list?
Well, thank you, and good evening, and it's really good to be with you. And as you say, the decisions on the red list are based on the science. So we have a scientific grouping called the Joint Biosecurity Centre, and it's that group that makes decisions on red listing. In the case of South Africa, you know, there's been real progress, actually, both in the UK and in South Africa. There's been progress in the fight against COVID. So in South Africa, we've seen cases going down, we've seen vaccinations going up, we've seen statistics on variants of concern improving. But the concern that our experts have is around the presence of the beta variant in South Africa, even at small levels. And the reason for that is because because of the potential for the beta variant to evade vaccine protection, circumvent vaccines. So that's the reason that South Africa is still on the red list. It's not just South Africa, there are 54 countries on the red list, and only 8 were removed on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, those 54 countries that you're saying that are on the red list and the 8 that were removed on Friday, some of those countries, those 8 countries that were removed, those statistics, the science when it comes to the COVID-19 rate of infection appears to be much worse than the case of South Africa. I mean, you're speaking here about the beta variant as well, but I must ask, Adam, did the UK not also have a beta variant? Did you not also have a Delta variant at some point? It just seems as though, you know, what is good for South Africa, what is bad for South Africa is not necessarily the case for other countries. Just help us unpack that and understand that.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, something that I should have said earlier, actually, is that, you know, we understand that the red list, you know, has, you know, an impact. It has a personal impact on people and it has an economic impact. And, you know, we do appreciate that. And it is a temporary and extraordinary measure to protect our people against COVID. And, you know, we want to remove it as soon as it's feasible to do so. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there. Now, you're absolutely right. You know, when it comes to something like the Delta, for example, the Delta variant is present in the United Kingdom, just as it's present in South Africa. So that's obviously less of a concern for us. The beta variant is a concern just because of its ability to evade vaccine protection. It's still, for example, the August figures present in South Africa in small numbers. And I think that is the area that our scientists were concerned about. So in a way, you know, the other statistics you talk about, you know, I'm not a scientist, I'm not qualified to do comparisons with 54 countries or 8. But what I did want to say to you is that's at the heart of the concern that our scientists have.
Yeah. And won't you just clarify this for us, please? Is it true that you do not recognize South Africa's vaccination program? Now, given the fact that we are also taking the Pfizer vaccine, the same vaccine that I believe the UK is also administering, we've also got, a Johnson & Johnson vaccine as well that is being administered. I'm just trying to understand, and maybe you can clarify for us, why wouldn't the UK recognize the vaccination program of South Africa?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking me that question, because there's been a misunderstanding about that point. You know, of course, we recognize the validity of vaccines anywhere in the world. And, you know, a Pfizer in South Africa is just as valid as Pfizer anywhere else. So we do recognize that. I think the issue here is vaccine certification. So it's, you know, the recognition of each other's vaccine certificates. And on that issue, we've been taking, as the UK, a gradual approach. So we started very small with a pilot, recognizing the vaccine certificates of a few countries, and we're expanding that out. So on Friday, for example, we announced the next set of countries. But we're hoping to expand that across the world and, enter into...
Just to interject there, Adam, are you saying right now that you do not recognize South Africa's vaccine certificate? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is we haven't had the discussion about that yet. So because we've been taking this graduated approach, those discussions haven't happened, but we are, we're looking forward to having those discussions with the South African government. And actually, we're working closely with the National Department of Health, for example, around the electronic vaccine data system, which is a key underpinning of vaccine certification. So we're working with them to support that system. So it's just, we haven't got to that point yet because, the world of COVID, we've been putting in place new arrangements, haven't we, all the time? And so we started with a few countries, we're expanding it, and we look forward to having that discussion with South Africa.
All right, when it comes to having that discussion with South Africa, as you can imagine, I'm sure, Adam, you're quite aware of this, about 430,000 tourists were in South Africa in the year 2019. And significantly so, South Africa's tourism industry is significantly, obviously, related to the UK as well as some of the visitors from the UK, which means that we're experiencing about a loss of about 790 million rand or so per month as a result for hampered tourism. So in the aim of finding an amicable solution for all concerned, when will that meeting be held with South African scientists so that we can understand this issue around vaccine certification? Because I won't lie to you, it doesn't make sense to know that the same vaccine that I'm taking and the same vaccine that you're taking, somehow mine does not get recognized and yet yours gets recognized. That does not make sense. So when are we working in collaboration with the South African government and the scientists so that I'm sure you can understand why we would want to find a solution as soon as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the first issue for us to work on together is the red listing issue. I talked to you a bit before about the reasons that the red listing continued and the concerns of our scientists. We have already made clear to the South African government that we would welcome a discussion between our scientific experts, and we'll work with them to have that discussion as soon as is practicable. Both our countries have high amounts of scientific expertise. South Africa has very advanced genomic sequencing. So I think that sort of discussion would be really rewarding to just make sure there's as much as possible of a shared understanding between us. A red listing is reviewed regularly, as you know. It's only a temporary measure. And so those sorts of discussions will hope, and the continuation of the progress that we've seen in both our countries will hopefully lead to, red listing being lifted as soon as possible.
What say you then about the argument that this is purely political?
That's not true.
Nothing at all.
We have a close relationship with South Africa. A long relationship, an important relationship. We've been working together this year in so many different ways, in the G7, but also domestically. I talked about the work that we're doing with the National Department of Health, both on the electronic vaccine system, but also, on the health sector more generally. Yeah. I could name many other areas where we're working together. This isn't political. It's based on the advice of our scientists and that concern that I mentioned to you. And I think discussion between our scientists will help us hopefully, narrow as much as we can, or increase as much as we can in, the areas where we agree on this issue.
So this entire situation where we find our country being placed on the red list is on a beta variant, as to you're admitting that it's only a few people that have actually seen to have the beta variant as per the scientific research that you've conducted. So those few people who may have had the beta variant, because as you would appreciate, COVID-19 statistics change on a daily rate anyways. So those very few people are what is causing and still insisting on South Africa remaining on the red list. We're just trying to understand how the beta variant, which, as you said, is from a few people, has got a significant impact on the majority of those who would benefit from the bilateral relations that we share, benefit from the tourism that we share between ourselves, and in the hope of building this relationship that you're speaking about, you're going to let the few people affect an entire relationship between two countries? Adam, I'm sure this does not make sense even to you.
So, as I say, this is a decision based on the science, and the concern of our scientific experts is around the transmission of beta in the community. And as we were discussing earlier, why is there a concern about beta? It's because of the potential risk of the beta variant circumventing vaccine protection. So that's the reason, for the concern here. But the fact that beta is going down is good news. It's part of the progress that we're seeing in South Africa. My hope is that those trends are sustained because that then, increases, the more we see this progress, the sooner, which is what we all hope, that South Africa can be removed from the red list.
Yeah. And very quickly, if you have to give us a timeline, are we expecting scientists to collaborate between South Africa and the UK and South African scientists to collaborate within the next week, within the next 2 weeks, within the next few days? What are we looking like from a time perspective?
So we're happy for those conversations to take place as soon as possible, to be honest with you. The sooner the better from our point of view. And I think that will be valuable given the mutual expertise that we have in both of our countries.
Adam Bai, we'll leave it there for this evening. Thank you so much for your